Hello again, friends, and welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. It's Emerson Phillips, joined by Wes Mitchell. Will Muschamp holding his pre-Tennessee press conference today, and a very brief press conference, only about 14 minutes. Will Muschamp addressed the media in a little bit more upbeat press conference today, Wes, with South Carolina coming off the win over UMass. Not an overwhelming win by the Gamecocks, but one that has given the Gamecocks a reason to believe that this football team can improve over the second half of the season.
Yeah, it was a short presser. I think some of that was just that a lot of the questions we've I guess had throughout the year have sort of started to be pretty clear, whether it's a good answer or a bad answer. A lot of questions have been answered this year. The quarterback situation sort of being one of them. The fact that obviously we know Jake Bentley is he's going to start this week after all the questions last week, so I think that played into it. But yeah, Muschamp, he was in a great mood. I thought he was in a great mood on the teleconference on Sunday, and I think it's twofold. He's always been positive about the future here, as far as his ability to win and for this staff to win and to get the right players in here. But I think there's a little bit of feeling of positivity from the way this group practiced. He said a couple times what a good practice it was, today. And I always like when a coach will just openly admit a mistake too, not even necessarily when he's called on it. And he basically just threw it out there that he's like, I made a mistake. We should have went one-on-one. Excuse me, not one-on-one, ones-on-ones, as in first team on first team far earlier in the year. And that's what they've been doing lately. And with Tennessee, I didn't even realize this, but according to Muschamp, there's a lot of schematic similarities between what Tennessee's going to do offensively and defensively to what South Carolina does offensively and defensively. So you don't necessarily have that need for the scout team that you would otherwise, where you're trying to sort of get a look at their concepts as much. So I thought that was interesting. He was in a great mood, and I think he's excited to see what his team could do this week. He mentioned a couple times that this game has been decided by 11 total points in the last 4 years. So, that just goes to show you how close it's been. And, I think he's curious to see if this year's bunch can hang in there too. South Carolina, of course, was driving down for a possible win last year in Knoxville and had the big fumble by Jarrell Adams. So, they've been in the position against Tennessee. They've been in a situation where they could win some games and just have not done it the last 3 years.
Tennessee's won 3 straight in the series. We got a 7-20 kick Saturday night at Williams-Brice. The Gamecocks are 3-4 overall and 1-4 in SEC play. Tennessee comes in 5-2 overall, 2-2 in the league. Wes, this really is a huge ball game for both teams. Let's talk about the stakes. Tennessee trails Florida by a game in the SEC East. So they're trying to make up ground on the Gators and get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. They do hold the tiebreaker against Florida because they beat the Gators earlier this year. So Tennessee has got to win this game to keep their SEC East championship hopes alive. And the Gamecocks at 3-4 have a chance to level their record at 500. Gamecocks are about 13-point underdogs going into this Tennessee matchup. And Wes, a South Carolina win would give the Gamecocks real hope of making a bowl game. Just a couple of weeks ago, that didn't seem very likely.
Yeah, I think this is the one that you circle. If you look at the possibility of going to a bowl, to me, it's hard to sort of find those 6 wins without a win on Saturday. And South Carolina, another big underdog at home, but this is a massive game for them. I think that they almost owe one for Tennessee. I think if you look back, a few years ago, I think that would have been 2013, where South Carolina was essentially kept out of Atlanta in the SEC championship because of an upset loss at Tennessee. So, Tennessee in a situation where they're sort of on track. I think they're the best team in the East right now, but the best team in the East doesn't always represent the East. So, it's sort of a game where there would be a little bit of poetic justice, for South Carolina to beat Tennessee. And, another interesting thought that crossed my mind, Emerson, is that I think that sort of what South Carolina wants to do as a program under Muschamp, the blueprint is almost there as far as Tennessee. Muschamp talked about how well Tennessee has recruited and how they look like an SEC team is supposed to look now. I think you can almost see sort of Tennessee, how they brought in some really big classes early on. They've just steadily improved in their win-loss record, and it's taken them some time, but now they are sort of the top contender for the East. And I think South Carolina, you look as far as just staying the course, recruiting players, and then, South Carolina, of course, hopes in 3 or 4 years. I know fans hope it's sooner than that, but I think realistically, you start thinking 3-4 years down the road, stacking recruiting classes on top of recruiting classes. That's sort of the blueprint for getting to where you need to be, because the East, this is not the West. It's not a situation where you have to. To win the West, you got to be a top 5 team basically. The East isn't really. That's not the case over here. You need a favorable schedule, you need some breaks, and you need to have a top 25 team, and you can compete for the East. So, I think Tennessee sort of shows you the blueprint for that.
This is Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. We invite you to download the free Gamecock Central Radio app. We've got a phone app. It's free of charge. It's available on the App Store and on Google Play. You can listen to Gamecock Central podcasts on your phone anywhere you receive cell phone service. Search for Gamecock Central Radio on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Muschamp gave a Gamecock injury report today, and good news, Wes. The Gamecocks will need all hands on deck to beat Tennessee.
Yeah, I thought, Donnell Stanley back at practice is obviously a big deal. He's still dealing with a little bit of gimpiness, I guess is the word that Muschamp used, or he's a little bit gimpy on his ankle. So that I got the feeling is sort of still up in the air whether he would play against Tennessee, but it sounds like he'll at least be available if needed. Then you look, of course, I thought one of the big ones was Jonathan Walton. Jonathan Walton's had a big year for South Carolina at linebacker. He missed the UMass game. To me, it's twofold. You've had a situation where there were some communication issues on the defense against UMass. Plus, you look, Tennessee has a big physical running back in Jalen Hurd. Plus, you look at Joshua Dobbs. This is a big guy that's very good in the run as well. This is someone that can extend plays. You have to. I feel like you have to be physical against Tennessee. You have to have backs, or you have to have linebackers that can match up with their running backs as far as their size goes. So, they'll be without Kamara, will Tennessee, but they'll have Hurd in the backfield. So I think having Jonathan Walton back is a big deal. And it sounds like South Carolina's relatively healthy. A.J. Turner was a little bit banged up with his knee against UMass. He's back. DJ Smith got banged up in the game. He's back. So, South Carolina actually, if you consider where we are in the season, this is, game 8. It just hit me we're late in the season now, and South Carolina very healthy for all things considered.
Yeah, about the healthiest the Gamecocks have been this year. Wes, let's talk about Tennessee injuries. We know they're banged up, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and it looks like Tennessee running back Alvin Kamara will miss the South Carolina game. At least that's the prognosis as we record here on Tuesday. But Tennessee still got Jalen Hurd, but they battled some injuries this year, and that could be a problem for them on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Now they've recruited well enough that they have the depth to where it probably doesn't affect them quite as much as it would if South Carolina had all those injuries. But that's certainly a big storyline of the game, I think. And I tend to think you're probably going to see another close football game. Muschamp talked a lot about the sort of preparation and how these games have come down to one or two plays. And I think when you're talking about a bunch of backups playing, sometimes you just don't make a play that maybe your starters would have. So, generally Tennessee, they're going to have SEC level athletes regardless of if they're at their second string guy or their starter. But, that guy's a backup for a reason. Either he's not played as much or maybe isn't quite as ready, isn't quite ready to be the guy. So, I think if you're talking about a potential close game when you have a bunch of injuries, that can be a big factor against the team. So I'll be curious to see which team can sort of avoid the big mistakes, because if you look at South Carolina, you look at some of these close ball games they've been in, it's been the big mistakes that have cost them.
The Gamecocks have lost 7 straight against ranked opponents, including 3 straight against Tennessee. But the last 4 meetings between South Carolina and Tennessee have been decided by a total of 11 points. So these games have been very close in recent years, and this has been a very competitive series. I think a lot more competitive than most people would realize. At least folks are on the outside looking in. So, Wes, Muschamp talked about Jake Bentley, obviously, in his press conference today, and Muschamp said that one of Bentley's talents is preparation. He said that Bentley spent 2.5 hours studying film in preparation for Tennessee. Did that yesterday.
Yeah, it is, and obviously the guy's got an arm. He can make all the throws, but he's very, very sharp mentally, knows where the football is supposed to go. And I'm very curious to see what this offense looks like this week. I mean, I thought they were actually very conservative in their play calling on Saturday against UMass, and I really don't think it's because Bentley can't do it. I think he can do a lot of the things you think about when you talk about a wide-open offense, but this was more of a screen game, a wide receiver screen, perimeter screen type offense. And, I think against some of the teams like Tennessee, we saw South Carolina, against the Georgia, against the Texas A&M, sort of need to open up the offense, but really they tried and just were not able to do that because I think a lot of it was because of quarterback play. So I'm very curious to see against Tennessee. This is a week that Jake Bentley's going to be challenged, I think. He's going to be asked to make some throws you probably don't just in theory want to ask a freshman to make, but I think Jake Bentley's very capable of making them. So I'm curious to see how he responds to that against in his first ever SEC matchup.
Wes, Muschamp also talked about running back David Williams. Coach Muschamp said that Williams has improved his practice habits, and that was a talking point earlier in the season. Coach Muschamp said that hustle is a habit, and Williams got involved on Saturday's game against UMass, and it was good to see him get back in the mix. Gamecocks feel pretty good about their top three running backs with A.J. Turner, Rico Dowdle, and David Williams back in the fold.
Yeah, I think we've said for a while that this team is going to need David Williams at some point. So that's always a positive to see a guy respond. And this staff, you know what, they're hard on guys sometimes that need it, but I think, at the same time, you see that they don't give up on these guys either. As long as the player is still hanging in there with them, and is willing to try to sort of battle back, they don't give up on them. And I actually think down the stretch, without naming any names, I think down the stretch you could see another player or two that maybe we've forgotten about, maybe that hasn't played as much this year. I think there's still a chance that you see a few guys emerge down the stretch as player. It takes players different amounts of time to sort of get it and to get what the staff is looking for from a practice standpoint. So, I think even as soon as this week against Tennessee, you could maybe still see, it was kind of a surprise to see David Williams get to start this past Saturday. I think even as soon as this week, you could maybe see another guy step in there that maybe we haven't heard from too much this year so far.
All right, Wes, Tennessee brings defensive end Derek Barnett into the ball game. Will Muschamp says he can change a game, and Muschamp said on multiple occasions that the Gamecocks will have to account for him. Barnett's a quality football player, Wes.
Absolutely. He's a guy South Carolina recruited a bit. He's a big defensive end that can also move his feet. Kind of he's not really a guy that can just stop the run or just rush the passer. He can do it all, and I think he's a big reason why Tennessee is 5-2. They've got a lot of good players, but he's one of the biggest reasons on that defense. And Tennessee, you have to consider some of their opponents, but they've actually not stopped the run as well as you would think. So, that's something that'll be curious to see, is if South Carolina can sort of move the line of scrimmage against this Tennessee front seven.
Wes, it should be fun on Saturday night. A lot at stake for both teams, and a 7:20 kickoff, a night game at Williams-Brice coming up on Saturday. The Gamecocks need a win to get to 500 on the year, and Tennessee trying to keep its SEC East championship hopes alive. So plenty on the line on Saturday night. Wes, rivalry game in the SEC East. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, and of course we'll have complete coverage on GamecockCentral.com.
All right, Wes, thanks very much. That's Wes Mitchell. I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for joining us.